The sound of the slap echoed through the university auditorium, silencing the pre-graduation chatter. My daughter Madison stood frozen on the stage, her hand pressed to her reddening cheek, her valedictorian speech forgotten on the podium. Before I could move, Catherine Thompson's shrill voice pierced the stunned silence. "You stole this from my Emma. You have no right to be valedictorian." Security was already moving toward the stage, but Catherine wasn't finished. She turned to the crowd, her perfectly highlighted hair swinging dramatically. "This girl and her gold-digging mother stole everything from us. First my husband, then Emma's spot at the top of the class." I watched my daughter's eyes fill with tears, the golden honor cords around her neck suddenly seeming to weigh 1,000 pounds. Behind her, Emma Thompson, Catherine's daughter, stood with the other graduates, looking mortified but making no move to stop her mother's tirade. The security guards finally reached Catherine, but the damage was done. Whispering had already started, phones were recording, and my daughter's proudest moment had been turned into tomorrow's viral video. "Mrs. Thompson," the dean's voice cut through the chaos. "You need to leave. Now." I caught Madison's eye across the auditorium and gave her a slight nod. We prepared for something like this. Catherine had been escalating her behavior ever since Madison's valedictorian announcement, but I'd hoped she wouldn't stoop this low. I should have known better. As security escorted Catherine out, I reached into my purse and touched the manila envelope I'd been carrying for weeks. Inside were bank statements, transfer records, and emails that would silence Catherine for good. But first, my daughter needed to give her speech. Madison straightened her shoulders, wiped her eyes, and stepped back to the podium. "I'm sorry for the interruption," she said, her voice steady despite everything. As I was saying, I felt James, my husband of 8 years, squeeze my hand. He looked devastated, torn between pride in his daughter and shame at his ex-wife's behavior. "I should have known she'd do something like this," he whispered. "It's not your fault," I replied, though part of me wanted to scream that yes, he should have known. Catherine had been making our lives hell since the day James and I got married. Madison's speech was beautiful, a testament to perseverance and the power of blended families. The irony wasn't lost on me as I watched Emma Thompson shift uncomfortably in her seat. The girl who'd spent 4 years trying to undermine my daughter while her mother funded her every whim with money she didn't have. As the ceremony continued, my mind drifted back to the day I met James and his quiet 12-year-old daughter. I was a new teacher at her middle school, and Madison had been struggling with math. Catherine had just left them for a wealthy real estate developer, declaring that she deserved more than a high school teacher's salary could provide. What Catherine didn't know was that I'd already sold my tech startup for enough money to never work again. I chose to teach because I loved it, just as I chose to love Madison as my own, helping her through the trauma of her mother's abandonment. The ceremony ended, but I knew our day wasn't over. Catherine was waiting in the parking lot, surrounded by her country club friends, all of them shooting venomous looks our way. Emma stood beside her mother, clutching her diploma, looking like she wanted to disappear. "There she is," Catherine's voice carried across the parking lot. "The woman who stole my life and turned my daughter against me." Several parents turned to stare. Madison gripped my hand tighter. "Mom," she whispered, "you don't have to." "Actually, I do," I said quietly. "It's time everyone knew the truth." I walked toward Catherine, the manila envelope in my hand. 8 years of canceled child support payments, 8 years of watching Madison cry when her mother missed another visitation, 8 years of Catherine taking credit for Madison's achievements while contributing nothing but criticism. "Catherine," I kept my voice level. "I think it's time we discussed who really paid for Emma's education." Her face paled slightly, but she maintained her sneer. "What are you talking about? I paid for my daughter's education myself. Unlike some people, I can afford the best for my child." "Really?" I pulled out the first bank statement. "Because these records show that the money for Emma's tuition came from James' accounts, the same accounts you've been secretly transferring money from for years." The whispers around us grew louder. Catherine's perfectly manicured hands clenched into fists. "You see," I continued, loud enough for her friends to hear, "while you were calling me a gold digger, you were stealing from your ex-husband's inheritance to fund your lifestyle. The country club memberships, Emma's car, the designer clothes, all paid for with money you embezzled." "That's a lie," but Catherine's voice shook slightly. "Is it?" I pulled out more documents. Your new husband's real estate empire collapsed 2 years ago. You've been bankrupt, living on stolen money while pretending to be the perfect mother who sacrificed everything for her daughter. Emma stepped forward, her face white. Mom, what is she talking about? But Catherine was staring at the bank statements in my hand, recognition dawning in her eyes. She knew exactly what I had. Those statements are private. Catherine lunged for the envelope, but I stepped back smoothly. Private like the college fund you drained? I asked calmly. The one James's parents set up for Madison before they passed away? The money you somehow convinced the bank to transfer to Emma's account? Emma's perfectly made-up face crumpled. What? Mom, you said my tuition came from Dad's life insurance. Catherine spun toward her daughter. Of course it did, sweetie. She's lying, trying to turn you against me just like she turned Madison. Actually, James stepped forward, his voice heavy with years of suppressed anger. Your mother never received any life insurance money. Your father's business went bankrupt and he left nothing but debt. The only reason you got to stay in that house was because I kept paying the mortgage, even after the divorce. The crowd of parents and graduates had grown, phones still recording. Catherine's country club friends were backing away slowly, their designer handbags clutched close as if bankruptcy might be contagious. Show them the letter, Mom, Madison said quietly. I pulled out a handwritten note, dated 6 years ago. Catherine's face went from red to white as she recognized her own handwriting. James, I read aloud. I need $50,000 transferred to my account immediately. If you don't comply, I'll tell Madison what really happened the night of her dance recital. How you were too drunk to pick her up, and that's why I had to leave. Should I continue, Catherine? That's not. I never, Catherine sputtered. Except James wasn't drunk that night, was he? I continued. He was in the emergency room with his mother, who was dying of cancer. You knew that, but you used it to blackmail him anyway. Just like you've been using Madison's pain to manipulate money out of James for years. Emma stepped away from her mother, tears streaking her expensive makeup. Is this true? Did you steal Madison's college fund for me? Of course not, sweetie. I would never. The transfers are all here. I held up another statement. $300,000 moved from Madison's account to Emma's the day after you lost your lawsuit against your second husband, the same day you discovered he hidden all his assets offshore. Catherine's carefully constructed facade finally cracked. What was I supposed to do? She screamed. Let Emma go to community college. Let everyone know we were broke. I had to maintain our lifestyle. While Madison worked 2 jobs to save for college, I added, while you told everyone she wasn't smart enough for an Ivy League school. The irony was bitter. Madison had earned her spot as valedictorian while working part-time, while Emma had every advantage money could buy. You know what the worst part is, Catherine? James's voice was quiet but carried across the stunned parking lot. If you just asked, I would have helped Emma. She's still my stepdaughter. But instead, you stole from one child to benefit another, then had the audacity to slap Madison for outperforming Emma. Emma turned to Madison, tears flowing freely now. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know where the money came from. All those times Mom told me you were trying to steal my spot, my friends. Madison, always the bigger person, reached for her stepsister's hand. It's not your fault, Emma. We were both played. Catherine looked around wildly, seeing her carefully constructed world crumbling. Her country club friends had all disappeared, taking their judgmental whispers with them. You think you've won, she snarled at me. You think exposing this makes you the better mother. At least I didn't have to buy my way into a ready-made family. I smiled, pulling out the final document. Actually, Catherine, there's one more thing you should see. The U.S. Attorney's Office is very interested in how you managed to forge James's signature on those bank transfers. They'll be waiting at your house right now. The color drained from Catherine's face completely. You reported me? No, I said softly. The bank did, 6 months ago. I've just been waiting for the right moment to let you know. I thought your daughter's graduation would be appropriate since you seem so concerned about family legacies today. As if on cue, 2 men in suits approached from across the parking lot, their badges glinting in the afternoon sun. Mrs. Thompson, one called out, we need you to come with us. Catherine's perfectly crafted world finally shattered. As the federal agents led her away, her expensive heels clicking on the pavement, I turned to Madison and Emma. Let's get out of here, I suggested. I think we all need to talk. Emma looked lost, her graduation robe suddenly seeming too big for her shoulders. I don't know where to go. Mom handled everything. Come with us, Madison said firmly. That's what sisters do. As we walked to our car, leaving the whispers and shocked stares behind, I heard Emma ask quietly, "Why didn't you expose this sooner? Why wait until today?" I caught James's eye in the rearview mirror as he started the car. He knew why. We'd waited because, despite everything Catherine had done, we hadn't wanted to ruin Emma's high school experience. We'd waited because sometimes being a parent means protecting all your children, even the ones who don't know they need protecting. But when Catherine slapped my daughter on what should have been the proudest day of her life, she finally crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way, and Catherine Thompson was about to learn hers in federal court. 3 months after graduation, I sat in the federal courthouse watching Catherine Thompson plead guilty to fraud and embezzlement. Her designer outfit had been replaced with something far more modest, her highlighted hair now showing dark roots. Behind her, Emma sat with us, her hand gripping Madison's tightly. The judge's voice echoed through the courtroom. "Mrs. Thompson, you have pleaded guilty to embezzling over $450,000 through fraudulent transfers and identity theft. Before I pass sentence, do you have anything to say?" Catherine stood, her shoulders slumped. Gone was the arrogant woman who'd slapped her daughter at graduation. I thought I was protecting my daughter," she said weakly. "I just wanted to give her the life I thought she deserved." "By stealing from another child?" the judge asked sharply. "By defrauding your ex-husband and traumatizing both daughters?" For the first time, Catherine looked directly at Madison. "I never meant. I was jealous," she admitted quietly. "When James married you," she glanced at me, "and Madison started calling you Mom, I felt replaced. Then when Madison started excelling at everything while living in your perfect little family. So you punish her for succeeding." The judge's voice was cold. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm sentencing you to 4 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. You'll also be required to pay full restitution." As the bailiff led Catherine away, Emma broke down in tears. Over the past 3 months, she discovered just how deep her mother's deceptions went. The private tennis lessons, the expensive car, even her designer wardrobe, everything had been paid for with stolen money. "What happens now?" Emma whispered as we left the courthouse. "Now," I said gently, "you focus on your first semester of college. Both of you." We'd spent the summer sorting through the financial mess Catherine left behind. James and I had decided to help Emma continue at the university, this time with honestly obtained funds. She insisted on taking out loans for part of it, determined to make things right. "I still can't believe she did all this," Emma said as we walked to the car. "All those times she told me Madison was trying to show me up, that you were trying to steal Dad." "Your mother was fighting battles that only existed in her mind," James said softly. "But that doesn't mean we stop being family." Madison bumped her shoulder against Emma's. "Besides, who else is going to help me survive Professor Hamilton's notorious economics class?" The girls laughed, and I marveled at their resilience. They'd somehow emerged from Catherine's scheme stronger, closer than they'd ever been as stepsisters. That evening, as we sat around our dining table, all 4 of us, I received an email from Catherine's prison account. "I know it's too late for apologies, but I want you to know I understand now. You weren't the gold digger. I was. You gave Madison what I never could. Unconditional love. Take care of both my daughters. They deserve better than what I gave them." I showed the email to James after the girls went upstairs. He read it silently, then pulled me close. "You know," he said, "when I first met you, Catherine told everyone you were just a gold-digging teacher who trapped me for my family money." I laughed softly. "Little did she know, you were the broke high school teacher I fell in love with." Along with his emotionally wounded daughter, he added, "who became our brilliant valedictorian." Upstairs, we could hear the girls laughing about something, their voices blending in the easy way of sisters who finally found their footing with each other. "Think we should tell them about the trust fund your tech company set up for both of them?" James asked. I shook my head. "Let them figure out who they are without worrying about money. That's something Catherine never understood. Real wealth isn't about designer clothes or country club memberships. It's about family," he finished. "Even the complicated ones," I agreed. Later that night, I found Madison looking at old photos. You okay, sweetheart? She nodded, holding up a picture from her middle school graduation, the last event Catherine had attended before today. You know what's funny? She spent all these years calling you a gold digger, never knowing you were the wealthy one all along. I sat beside her. Money doesn't make someone a good parent, honey. No, she smiled. Love does. And you've got that in abundance, Mom. Sometimes the best revenge isn't exposing someone's lies, it's living well despite them. Catherine Thompson learned that lesson too late, but her daughters were just beginning to understand it. And that more than any bank statement or court verdict was the real victory. The maintenance report landed on my desk with a soft thud. Miss Sullivan, her brother is requesting a day off for a medical appointment, my assistant, Sarah, said, her tone carefully neutral. I glanced at the security feed on my tablet. There he was, James Sullivan, once the golden boy of our family, now in gray maintenance coveralls, cleaning the third-floor bathrooms of Sullivan Global Headquarters. Denied, I said, touching the scar above my left eyebrow. A permanent reminder of the day he'd shown his true colors. He can schedule appointments outside work hours like everyone else. Sarah nodded and left, closing the heavy mahogany door behind her. I leaned back in what used to be our father's chair, remembering the day everything changed. 5 years ago, I'd been the quiet sister, the one with the accounting degree who spent weekends poring over company books while James charmed investors at golf courses. Dad had been proud of both of us, his charismatic son and his detail-oriented daughter. He never saw what was coming. None of us did, except me. The irregularities in the book started small, a few thousand here, a misplaced decimal there. But by the time Dad fell ill, James had embezzled nearly $7 million. I documented everything, building my case carefully, waiting for the right moment to protect our father's legacy. Then Dad had a stroke. I was at the hospital when James showed up, reeking of expensive scotch. Sign these, he demanded, shoving papers at our semi-conscious father. The company needs emergency restructuring. He's not signing anything, I said, standing between them. Not until he's better. Not until we discuss the missing money. James's face changed then, transforming from my beloved brother into someone I didn't recognize. You stupid bitch, he snarled. Always counting pennies, always checking books. You think anyone will believe you over me? The first slap sent me sprawling. The second knocked me into Dad's medical equipment. The third, the one that left the scar, came with his signet ring, splitting my skin. What James didn't know was that my phone had been recording everything, or that I had already sent copies of all his fraudulent transactions to the FBI, or that Dad, in his more lucid moments, had already signed everything over to me. A knock interrupted my memories. Come in. Marcus Wright, my head of security, entered with today's incident report. Your brother tried to access the executive elevator again. I smiled slightly. Of course he did. He also attempted to contact Mr. Richardson from accounting using the maintenance phone. Mr. Richardson, James' old golf buddy, who now avoided eye contact with the disgraced former VP who cleaned his office bathroom. Remind all department heads that unauthorized communication with maintenance staff is against policy, I said, signing the report. And Marcus, make sure James cleans the lobby bathrooms during tomorrow's board meeting. The timing would be perfect. All those investors and board members who once laughed at James's jokes would see him pushing his cleaning cart past their catered lunch. My phone buzzed. A text from our mother. He came by again last night, begging for money. Says you're being cruel. I typed back, like he was cruel when he stole Dad's retirement, or when he hit me in the hospital. Mom didn't respond. She'd chosen her side the day she testified at James's embezzlement trial, claiming he was under stress and didn't mean to hurt anyone. She'd begged me to drop the charges, to keep it in the family. But family had stopped meaning anything the moment James' ring split my skin. The security feed showed James moving to the executive floor bathrooms. Once this had been his domain. Now he needed special clearance just to clean it. Sarah, I called. My assistant appeared instantly. Please remind maintenance that the executive bathrooms need extra attention today. I'm meeting the Malaysian investors for lunch. Sarah's lips twitched. She knew exactly what that meant. James would have to clean while I hosted lunch in the executive dining room, watching him through the glass walls. The company had flourished since James's conviction. Without millions disappearing into his offshore accounts, we'd expanded globally. The maintenance job had been part of his plea deal, community service instead of jail time, working for the company he tried to destroy. My phone buzzed again. James's ex-wife this time. Please, Catherine, he's living in a studio apartment. The kids barely recognize him anymore. I left it unanswered just as I'd left all her messages since she sided with him at the trial. Instead, I pulled up the latest acquisition reports. We were buying out Henderson Global next month, another company where James used to golf with the CEO. A commotion outside my office drew my attention to the security feed. James was arguing with a guard, gesturing at the executive elevator again. I used to run this place. His voice came through clearly on the audio. That's my sister up there, playing CEO in my father's office. I pressed the intercom. Marcus, please remind Mr. Sullivan that another outburst will result in termination of his community service arrangement. I'm sure the district attorney would be happy to discuss alternative arrangements. The fight drained from James's face. Prison had always been his greatest fear, still was. He stepped back, head down, and returned to his cleaning cart. Looking at him now, no one would guess he'd once been Sullivan Global's crown prince. His designer suits were replaced by polyester coveralls, his Rolex traded for a plastic time card clock. A soft announced an email, the latest company newsletter draft for approval. The front page showed our newest board members, all women I'd personally recruited from competitors. James had once mocked my obsession with diversity initiatives. Now those same initiatives had transformed our company's culture and tripled our profits. Miss Sullivan. Sarah appeared again. Your father's nurse called. He's having a good day and asked to see you. Dad had never fully recovered from his stroke, but his good days were becoming more frequent. I'd moved into the best private facility in the country, paid for with the money we'd recovered from James' accounts. Clear my afternoon, I said, gathering my things. And Sarah, make sure James knows he needs to stay late to buff the lobby floors. The Malaysian investors will be arriving early tomorrow. As I stepped into my private elevator, the same one James had once used, I caught a glimpse of him through the glass, on his knees, scrubbing a toilet. Our eyes met for a moment. I touched my scar again, smiled, and let the elevator doors close. The Malaysian investors arrived precisely at 8 a.m. through my office window. I watched James buffing the lobby floors, his face tight with humiliation as executives in $1,000 suits stepped around his cleaning equipment. Miss Sullivan. Sarah appeared at my door. Mr. Tan and his team are here. And your brother is requesting an urgent meeting. Tell maintenance that urgent meetings are for their supervisor, I replied, adjusting my channel suit, the same brand James's ex-wife used to wear before the divorce settlements cleaned out her accounts. And send in our guests. The meeting went perfectly. Mr. Tan was impressed by our expansion plans, particularly our new Asian market strategy. As we toured the building, I made sure to lead them past every spot where James was working. Your attention to cleanliness is impressive, Mr. Tan commented as James hurriedly moved his cart aside. We believe every position has dignity, I said, smiling directly at my brother. Even our maintenance staff are former executives who understand the importance of honest work. James's knuckles went white on his mop handle. I saw the same rage flash in his eyes that I'd seen in the hospital 5 years ago. Later, as I escorted the investors to lunch, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Your brother tried to leave a note for Mr. Tan. Security intercepted it. Send it to my office, I replied, and dock us pay for unauthorized communication. The note, when I read it later, was predictably desperate. Mr. Tan, I'm James Sullivan, the rightful heir to this company. My sister is destroying our father's legacy. Please help me set things right. I added the note to my collection, evidence of every attempt he'd made to undermine me since his release. Each one strengthened my position if he ever violated his plea agreement. Catherine. I looked up. James stood in my doorway, still in his cleaning uniform, face flushed with anger and shame. Maintenance staff need authorization to be on this floor, I reminded him, pressing the security alert under my desk. They were my investors first, he spat. I brought Tan into this company 10 years ago. Before or after you started stealing from Dad's retirement fund. He flinched. I was going to pay it back, if you just kept quiet. Like I kept quiet when you hit me? I stood slowly. Or when you tried to force Dad to sign company control over to you while he was barely conscious. I was protecting our legacy. By stealing from it? I laughed coldly. By attacking your sister in a hospital room? That legacy. Security arrived, Marcus leading the team. James straightened his uniform, trying to salvage some dignity. The Malaysian contract, he said quickly. I know things about Tan. Things that could help you close the deal. I picked up my phone, pulled up a photo, and turned it toward him. It showed him at a private club with Mr. Tan 7 years ago, both clearly drunk, James writing something on a napkin. You mean how you promised him exclusive rights to Dad's patents? Rights he didn't own. I smiled as his face paled. I found all your little secret deals, James. Cleaned them up. Made things right. Miss Sullivan. Marcus interrupted gently. The investors are waiting in the conference room. Escort my brother back to the maintenance floor, I instructed, and remind him that another unauthorized visit will violate his plea agreement. As they led him away, I called out, "Oh, and James. The executive bathrooms need attention." Mr. Tan mentioned they weren't up to standard. His shoulders stiffened, but he didn't respond. Once he would have exploded, maybe tried to hit me again. But prison hadn't just been his greatest fear, it had been his greatest teacher. My phone buzzed again. Mom, having dinner with your brother tonight. Please reconsider his position. He's family. I touched my scar, remembering how she'd minimized it at the trial. Just a family disagreement, she told the judge. Siblings fight sometimes. Can't talk now, I texted back. Meeting with investors who remember when James used to sit where I am now. They seemed impressed by how far we've come since the embezzlement. Cruel, perhaps. But so was watching your son attack your daughter and calling it a disagreement. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through my office windows. Somewhere below, James was cleaning bathrooms he once used exclusively, serving a company he once thought he'd inherit, watching his sister succeed where he had failed. And tomorrow, he'd do it all again. Because that was the thing about karma. It didn't need to be cruel to be effective. It just needed to be consistent. 2 weeks after the Malaysian investor's visit, James made his final play. I should have seen it coming. He'd been too quiet, too compliant. The board meeting was in full swing when he burst in, wearing a tailored suit instead of his maintenance uniform. Behind him, a flustered security guard apologized. Miss Sullivan, he had his old keycard. Someone from it must have. I raised my hand, silencing the guard. The board members shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the disgraced former VP despite his 5-year absence. Ladies and gentlemen, James announced, his voice carrying that old charismatic confidence. I have evidence that my sister obtained control of this company through fraud. Several board members glanced my way. I remained seated, calm, one finger tracing my scar. She manipulated our father while he was ill, James continued, pulling out a folder. I have proof. You mean these? I pressed a button, and the screen behind me lit up with scanned documents. The ones you paid Thomas in it to forge for you last week? James's confidence faltered. How did you? Thomas has been working for me since before your conviction, I smiled. Every desperate attempt, every bribe, every forged document, I have them all. The board members were watching now with understanding. This wasn't just a disruption, it was a demonstration. Show them the hospital footage, James demanded. Show them how Dad signed everything over to you while he was drugged. I pressed another button. The screen showed security footage from Dad's hospital room. The night James had attacked me. The board members gasped as they watched their former BP strike his sister repeatedly. Wrong footage? I asked softly. James staggered back. That's not. You're manipulating. Like you manipulated Dad's accounts, I stood slowly. The ones you drained to pay for your gambling debts? Or perhaps like you manipulated Mom into thinking your attack on me was just a sibling squabble. Miss Sullivan, our legal director interrupted. Should we call the police? This violates his plea agreement. James's face went ash white. Prison time, his worst fear. No, I said, walking around the table. My brother made his choice today. Wore his old suit. Played his last card. I faced him directly. Now he gets to make another choice. Catherine, please, he whispered. Option 1. I press charges. You go to prison. No more community service protection. I held up one finger. Option 2. You return to maintenance with additional duties. No more contact with any staff above janitorial level. No more attempted bribes. Complete isolation. The board watched silently. Some had been James's friends once, had golfed with him, had laughed at his jokes. "You're my sister," he tried one last time. "And you're the man who scarred me for life because I caught you stealing from our dying father." I touched my scar. Choose James, prison blues or cleaning blues. He looked around the boardroom, his old domain now filled with faces that showed no sympathy, no recognition of the man he'd once been. I'll take maintenance," he whispered. "Good choice." I returned to my seat. "Report to Marcus for your new schedule. You'll start with the parking garage level tonight." As security led him out, I addressed the board. "My apologies for the interruption. Now about our Asian market expansion." Later that night, watching from my office window, I saw James in his maintenance uniform again, pushing his cart toward the underground garage. His shoulders were slumped, his step heavy with the weight of his final defeat. My phone lit up with a text from Dad's nurse. "He's asking for you. Good day today." I gathered my things, pausing at the security feed one last time. James was on his knees, scrubbing tire marks from the garage floor, while above him, the empire he tried to steal flourished under his sister's watch. Sometimes karma doesn't need to be complicated. Sometimes it just needs to be thorough. And sometimes the best revenge isn't making someone suffer, it's making them watch you succeed. I turned off my office lights and headed to my father's facility, leaving my brother to his night shift, knowing he'd finally learned the most expensive lesson of all. That power doesn't come from charm or force, but from integrity and patience. The security camera feed on my tablet showed Michael trimming the hedges outside what used to be his dream home. Even from this distance, I could see the bitterness in his movements as he watched another luxury car pull into the driveway of Reynolds' estate, my estate now. "Ms. Reynolds," my assistant Emma's voice came through the intercom. "Your brother is requesting his monthly meeting." I touched the faint scar on my temple, a permanent reminder of the day Michael showed his true colors. Deny. He can submit any requests through the grounds maintenance supervisor. 3 years had passed since that day in Mom's hospital room, but I could still hear the sound of his fist connecting with my face, still feel the cold floor against my cheek as I lay there, blood mixing with tears while he ransacked Mom's belongings. "Where's the ring, Sarah?" he demanded, turning over drawers and emptying boxes. "That ring is worth a fortune. Amanda needs it for the wedding." Amanda, his now ex-fiancée who had convinced him our mother's vintage diamond ring was worth hundreds of thousands. The same Amanda who left him the moment she discovered the truth about our family's real wealth. But that day, all Michael saw was his chance to give his demanding fiancé the ring she wanted. He didn't know Mom had already given it to me, along with her most precious secret. "The ring stays in the family," I told him, my voice steady despite my fear. "Mom made me promise." The second punch came faster than the first. When I regained consciousness, the ring was gone from my pocket, and Michael was speeding away in his BMW, thinking he'd won. He didn't know the real treasure wasn't the ring. It was the tiny key hidden inside the false glass stone. A key that would lead me to a safety deposit box containing documents about our family's hidden fortune. Now, 3 years later, I sat in what used to be our grandfather's study, watching Michael through cameras he didn't know existed. The mansion he always bragged about buying someday was mine, along with the Reynolds family investment empire he never knew existed. My phone buzzed. A text from our Aunt Patricia. "Michael came by again, begging for money. Says you're being cruel making him work as a gardener." I smiled grimly, remembering how he had mocked my horticultural degree years ago. "Plants are for poor people," he'd sneered. "Real success means corner offices and business suits." "Tell him the position comes with free housing in the staff quarters," I texted back. "More than you get in prison for assault and theft." The criminal charges had been my bargaining chip. Work as estate staff or face prosecution, his choice. He chose the job, probably thinking he could somehow work his way back into the family's good graces. "Ms. Reynolds?" Emma appeared at my door. "The Historical Society is here for the tour. Should we redirect them from the garden path?" "No." I stood smoothing my designer suit, the kind Michael used to wear before he lost everything. "Let them see all of it, every rose bush, every perfectly trimmed hedge. My brother does excellent work." The society members gathered in the grand foyer, their excited whispers echoing off marble floors. This mansion had been in our family for generations, but few knew its true history. Grandfather had kept our wealth hidden, building an empire in secret while maintaining a modest public facade. Ladies and gentlemen, I address the group. Welcome to Reynolds Estate. Our gardens are particularly stunning today, thanks to our dedicated groundskeeper. Through the window, I could see Michael pause in his work, watching as I led the group. Many of them his former country club friends through his perfectly manicured domain. Sarah. A familiar voice made me turn. Amanda stood among the society members, dripping in obvious knockoff jewelry. I didn't know you. When did you inherit everything? I finished for her. Around the same time you left my brother over a glass ring. She flinched, her eyes darting to Michael outside. He was deliberately facing away now, his shoulders tense under his work uniform. If you'll follow me, I continued addressing the group, I'll show you the rose garden. It's our groundskeeper's specialty, though he once claimed gardening was beneath him. The tour continued, each stop carefully planned to ensure Michael could hear every word about the wealth he'd lost, the status he'd thrown away for a fake ring and a false fiancé. My phone buzzed again. Mom's nurse this time. Good day today. She's asking about Michael. Mom had recovered eventually, only to find her son gone and her daughter in possession of the empire she and grandfather had protected for so long. She cried when I showed her the security footage of Michael's attack, finally accepting the truth about her beloved son. Tell her he's working, I texted back, learning the value of things he once despised. A commotion outside drew my attention. Michael had thrown down his tools, trying to approach the tour group. Security moved swiftly, surrounding him with practiced efficiency. Just let me explain, he shouted. Sarah, please, I was desperate. Amanda needed a rich husband. I cut him off, my voice carrying across the manicured lawn. Now she knows you were never going to be one. Ironic, isn't it? The society members whispered among themselves, remembering how Michael used to boast about buying this mansion someday. Now they watched him being escorted back to his work, their pitying glances worse than any punishment I could devise. The roses need attention, I called after him. The Historical Society expects perfection. The annual Reynolds Foundation Gala was the perfect stage for Michael's complete humiliation. As I descended the grand staircase in a couture gown, I caught his reflection in the polished marble. He stood in his maintenance uniform, adjusting flower arrangements he'd been ordered to tend throughout the evening. Ms. Reynolds, Emma appeared at my elbow. The hedge fund managers from Singapore have arrived, and your brother is requesting to wear a suit for the event. Denied, I said, watching Michael's reflection flinch. Staff uniforms are mandatory for all service personnel. The ballroom sparkled with old money and new technology. Guests who once knew Michael as a wannabe socialite now walked past him without a glance, treating him as invisible as any other servant. Sarah, darling. Aunt Patricia's voice carried across the room. She was escorting an elderly gentleman I recognized instantly, James Morrison, Michael's former mentor and the man who had rejected him from partnership at his firm 3 years ago. Look who I found. Michael dropped a flower stem, his hands shaking as Morrison approached. My dear, Morrison kissed my cheek. I had no idea the Reynolds empire was your family's. Your brother used to speak of buying shares in our firm, but he never mentioned. Because he didn't know, I smiled deliberately loud enough for Michael to hear. Grandfather believed wealth should be earned, not inherited. Michael failed that test rather spectacularly. Morrison's eyes flickered to where Michael stood frozen, then back to me. The partnership position is still open, if you're interested. Your family's backing would be. Sarah. Michael's voice cracked behind us. Please, just 5 minutes. Security started forward, but I held up my hand. 3 minutes, in the study. The room grandfather had loved so much now served as my office. Michael stood awkwardly by the door while I sat behind a massive oak desk. You knew, he accused. All those years, you knew about the family money. No, I touched my scar again. Mom gave me the ring the day before you attacked me. She said it was more than it seemed. I didn't understand until I found the key inside the glass stone. His face contorted. The ring was fake. The diamond was glass. The key inside led to everything else. Documents, accounts, properties, grandfather's real legacy. I leaned forward. The legacy you could have shared if you'd chosen family over greed. I can change, he whispered. Give me another chance. A real position in the company. Like you gave me a chance in the hospital. I pressed the intercom. Security, please escort Mr. Reynolds back to the flower arrangements. They need refreshing before dinner. As they let him out, Morrison entered. Fascinating strategy, my dear, making him serve at his own downfall. Justice comes in many forms, I replied, rising. Now, about that partnership position. The gala continued in full swing. Michael moved between tables with fresh flowers, forced to hear snippets of conversations about deals he could have been part of, wealth he should have shared. Sarah, Amanda's voice surprised me again. She stood with a small group of socialites, all wearing real jewelry now. I didn't realize if I had known about the family money. You'd have stayed with Michael? I finished. Interesting. He's single now, and comes with staff quarters. She flushed deep red as those around her tittered. Michael, passing with a vase, nearly dropped it. The thing about real wealth, I continued loudly, is that it shows us who people truly are. Money doesn't change people, Amanda. It reveals them. Later that night, as guests departed in their luxury cars, I found Michael sitting on the garden steps, his uniform stained with water from countless vases. Morrison offered me partnership, I said, standing over him. The position you wanted. Going to take it? His voice was hollow. No, I watched his head snap up. Because unlike you, I built something of my own. This empire. I've tripled its value in 3 years, without violence, without stealing from family. I said I was sorry. No, I cut him off. You're sorry you lost everything. There's a difference. I started up the steps, then paused. The East Garden needs weeding tomorrow. Start at dawn. My phone lit up with a text from Mom. Coming to visit next week. Should I bring his baby pictures for the library wall? No, I typed back. Let him watch other families' histories decorate these walls. He chose his path. Through the security feeds, I watched Michael trudge to his staff quarters, a small room above the garage. Once he had dreamed of sleeping in the master suite. Now he could see its lights from his window, a nightly reminder of what his violence had cost him. Sometimes revenge isn't about causing pain. Sometimes it's about ensuring someone faces themselves in the mirror every morning, remembering exactly who they chose to be. And Michael had a lifetime of mornings ahead of him. The morning of the merger announcement with Morrison and Associates dawned bright and clear. I watched from my office as Michael meticulously trimmed the topiaries, unaware that his former dream firm was about to become part of the empire he'd lost. Ms. Reynolds, Emma's voice held a note of urgency. Your brother left this in the mailroom. She handed me an envelope addressed to James Morrison. Inside was a desperate plea, photographs of us as children, medical records citing his stress-induced temporary insanity during the ring incident, and a pathetic letter claiming I had manipulated our family's legacy. He tried to send copies to all board members, Emma added. I smiled, touching my scar. But they all came to you first, didn't they? Of course, as per protocol. The intercom buzzed. Ms. Reynolds, Mr. Morrison and the board have arrived. Perfect timing. I stood smoothing my designer's suit. Have security bring my brother to the main hall. It's time he understood exactly what he lost. The great hall was filled with board members and press when Michael was escorted in, still in his gardening uniform, dirt under his fingernails. Sarah, please, he started, but fell silent as James Morrison approached. Michael. Morrison nodded coldly. Your sister was just about to announce the merger. Fascinating how life turns out, isn't it? I stepped up to the podium, cameras flashing. Ladies and gentlemen, today marks the union of the Reynolds Empire with Morrison and Associates, a partnership that will revolutionize. She stole it. Michael's voice cracked through the hall. That empire was meant for both of us. Security moved forward, but I raised my hand. No, let him speak. Let everyone hear. Michael stumbled forward, pulling out crumpled photographs. We were supposed to share it. The ring. I made one mistake. One mistake. I turned to face him fully. Show them your hands, Michael. He looked down at his dirt-stained hands, once manicured and soft. These halls, you clean them. Those gardens, you tend them. This empire, you watch it grow without you, all because you chose violence over family. I was desperate. You were greedy. I cut him off. And now you're exactly what you always looked down on, someone who serves those you once thought you'd rule. The cameras caught everything: his trembling hands, his stained uniform, the stark contrast between us. Tomorrow's papers would complete his humiliation. The merger proceeds, I announced, turning back to the crowd. And my brother will continue his valuable service to the estate. Later, I found him sitting in the garden he'd so perfectly maintained, staring at the mansion's reflection in the fountain. You know what's ironic? I said, standing behind him. Mom's ring wasn't just hiding a key, it was teaching a lesson. Grandfather left clues about the fortune with both of us. You just never looked past the surface value. He looked up, realization dawning. The cufflinks he gave me for graduation contained a similar key. I nodded. But you pawned them for Amanda's engagement party. Tears streaked his dirty face. I could have had everything. No, Michael. You could have had family. The wealth was just a bonus. I left him there, reflected in the water like a ghost of his former self. My phone buzzed. Morrison confirming dinner plans to discuss the merger. Through the security feed, I watched Michael return to his quarters above the garage. Tomorrow, he'd wake up and tend the gardens again, watching others live the life he had thrown away. Some would call it cruel, making him serve in the house he once dreamed of ruling. But sometimes the best revenge isn't punishment, it's making someone tend the dreams they can no longer reach. And every flower he planted, every hedge he trimmed, was a reminder of the brother he'd chosen not to be. I watched the security footage replay for the 100th time, my mother wrapped in her hospital blanket, struggling to breathe as Richard threw her medical equipment onto our circular driveway. The timestamp showed 11:42 p.m., exactly when he thought I was stuck in a late meeting at Crawford Industries' Tokyo office. What he didn't know was that I'd been on a flight home after receiving an alert from our house staff. What he couldn't have known was that my business trip had actually been a series of meetings with our family's long-dormant board of directors. Your mother's care is bankrupting us. His voice crackled through the security recording. I won't let her medical bills destroy everything I've built. Everything he built. I paused the footage on his face, contorted with entitlement and rage, as he towered over my mother's fragile frame. Behind them, our mansion's lights blazed against the rainy night, illuminating the Crawford estate gates he'd insisted on installing after our wedding. Mrs. Crawford. My assistant's voice pulled me back to the present. The board members are assembled in the main conference room, and Mr. Crawford is in the lobby, demanding to know why his credit cards were declined at the country club. I checked my watch. Italian leather, a gift from my mother on my first day as Crawford Industries' silent CEO 15 years ago. The same position Richard thought he held, thanks to some creative paperwork and my mother's insistence on keeping our family's true power structure private. Have security escort him up, I said, gathering the documents I'd spent 3 years preparing. It's time he learned what bankruptcy really looks like. The conference room fell silent as Richard burst in, his golf clothes still immaculate despite his obvious agitation. Elizabeth, what the hell is going on? The club said our accounts are frozen. Not our accounts, Richard, I corrected, standing at the head of the table he always claimed as his spot. Your accounts, the ones you've been filling with money that was never yours to spend. He laughed, but there was a tremor in it. I'm the CEO of Crawford Industries. Every account in this company belongs to me. Actually, my mother's voice came from the doorway, steady despite her oxygen tank. That's not quite accurate. Richard spun around, his face paling. Margaret? You're supposed to be in that nursing home I arranged. You mean the substandard facility you tried to abandon her in? I interrupted, pressing a button that filled the wall screens with financial records. Let's discuss your arrangements, Richard, starting with how you've been embezzling from my family's company for the past 5 years. Your family's, he trailed off, finally noticing the board members' stern faces. This is ridiculous. I built Crawford Industries from nothing. Did you? My mother moved to stand beside me, her hospital bracelet stark against her silk blouse. Because I remember building it with my late husband 30 years ago. I remember stepping back when Elizabeth married you, allowing you to play CEO while she actually ran things. And I certainly remember you throwing me out of my own house last night. The house is in my name, he sputtered, but I was already sliding documents across the table. Is it? Check the property records. Check everything, Richard. The house, the cars, the private jet you love showing off. They're all Crawford family property. Property you tried to leverage for loans last month without board approval. His face went from pale to ashen. Those loans were for business expansion. They were to cover your gambling debts, I cut in, bringing up more records. Did you think we wouldn't notice the transfers to offshore accounts? The suspicious withdrawals every time you visited Vegas? The desperate attempts to access my mother's private trust? I was protecting our interests. He slammed his hand on the table, making my mother flinch. That woman's cancer treatments were bleeding us dry. No, I said quietly, they were cutting into your personal spending. The company's medical insurance, which you tried to cancel last week, covers all her treatments. Treatments she needs because she spent 30 years building this empire while raising me alone after Dad died. The board members were now openly glaring at Richard. They'd known my father, had watched me grow up in these halls, had quietly supported my mother's decision to let her new son-in-law believe he was in charge. You can't do this, Richard whispered, his golf tan fading to a sickly gray. I'm Richard Crawford. I run this company. Actually, I pressed another button, and security entered with boxes of his personal items. You're Richard Morrison again. The board voted this morning. You're not just fired, you're facing criminal charges for embezzlement, fraud, and elder abuse. Elder abuse? He laughed desperately. Because I wanted some peace in my own home. Your home. My mother's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Let me show you something, Richard. She picked up a remote and switched the screens to last night's security footage. The board watched in horror as Richard dragged my mother into the rain, as he threw her oxygen tank, as he ordered the staff to delete the footage he didn't know automatically uploaded to my private server. My daughter, my mother continued, gave you everything you wanted. Power, position, the illusion of control. All you had to do was be a decent human being. Instead, you showed us exactly who you are. Elizabeth, he turned to me, switching to the charm that had once won me over. Honey, we can talk about this. Your access cards have been deactivated, I informed him. Your accounts are frozen pending investigation. The prenup you insisted on, it only protected your assets, which it turns out were virtually non-existent. Everything else, it's all Crawford family property. Where am I supposed to go? He looked around wildly, as if seeking an ally among the board members who'd always seen through him. I hear there's a basement studio apartment available in Queens, my mother suggested. The landlord charges weekly, which should work well with your new circumstances. New circumstances? You'll need something within walking distance of public transportation, I explained. Your car lease has been terminated, and I doubt you can afford cab fare on your new budget. Budget? The word seemed to physically pain him. The board has agreed to a small monthly stipend while the criminal investigation proceeds. I pulled out one final document, provided you sign this confession and agree to full restitution of the embezzled funds. And if I refuse, then we contact the FBI, my mother said simply. I'm sure they'd be very interested in those offshore accounts. As security began escorting him out, Richard turned back one last time. I never would have married you if I'd known. That I wasn't just in Harris playing at business. That my mother wasn't just a sick old woman you could discard. That's the problem with men like you, Richard. You see what you want to see, until reality comes for its reckoning. The last thing I heard as the doors closed was Richard begging to keep his country club membership. Just another entitled man learning that some things, like karma, can't be bought or bullied. 3 months after Richard's removal, I sat in my rightful office reviewing our latest acquisitions. The company's stock had soared 50% since the leadership restructuring, as the business press tactfully labeled Richard's very public downfall. Elizabeth, my mother entered, her strength returning with each successful treatment. You need to see Richard's latest LinkedIn post. I glanced at her tablet. There was Richard, now working as a junior sales associate at a discount furniture store, sharing an inspirational post about humility in business and respecting family values. The comment section was merciless. Speaking of family values, my mother smiled. His application for our janitorial position just came through HR. Apparently, that furniture store commission isn't covering his new basement apartment rent. After the boardroom incident, Richard had tried launching a consulting firm, trading on the Crawford name he no longer had the legal right to use. But without me quietly managing everything, his true business capabilities became embarrassingly apparent. Ms. Crawford, my assistant entered with a stack of documents. The divorce settlement is ready for your signature. And Mr. Morrison, he's in the lobby again. Let me guess, Another attempt to negotiate? I checked the security feed. There was Richard in an off-the-rack suit that had replaced his custom-made wardrobe, shifting nervously near the reception desk. Actually, my mother checked her phone. He's here about the maintenance position. His landlord is threatening eviction, and apparently his parents won't take him in after what he did to me. The security feed showed Richard glancing repeatedly at the Crawford estate gates across the street, the same gates he'd once ordered me to drive my mother through that rainy night. Now she lived there while he could barely afford his basement studio's heating bill. Sent him up, I decided. Mom, would you like to sit in on this interview? Minutes later, Richard entered, faltering when he saw my mother sitting comfortably on the leather couch he'd once claimed as his power spot. Elizabeth, he started, then corrected himself. Miss Crawford. I know this is uncomfortable. Is it? I gestured to a basic office chair. I think it's rather straightforward. You're applying for our evening maintenance position. This is absurd, he muttered. I used to run this company. No, my mother interjected, you used to pretend to run this company. There's quite a difference. I reviewed his application on my screen. Let's examine your qualifications. 5 years as alleged CEO, though our audit shows you actually spent most of your time at the country club. Multiple executive decisions, all of which were actually made by me or the board. Fascinating resume. You know I'm capable of more than cleaning offices, he protested. Are you? I turned my screen to show him the company's performance charts. Revenue is up 60% since your departure. Employee satisfaction has tripled. Even our charitable giving has improved. Though that might be because you're not embezzling from those funds anymore. Richard flinched at the mention of his financial crimes. He tried maintaining his lifestyle after the separation, right up until his credit cards started declining at his favorite steakhouse. I have obligations, he said quietly. Legal fees, rent, restitution payments. You mean the payments you've been missing? I corrected. The ones that were part of your plea deal to avoid jail time. My mother examined his paperwork. The maintenance position pays $16 an hour, night shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. You'll report to our facilities manager. You remember Robert, right? The one whose healthcare benefits you tried to cut while my cancer treatments were too expensive. Richard's face reddened. This is beneath me. More beneath you than throwing a sick woman out in the rain? I asked quietly. More beneath you than stealing from her family's company while pretending to be its leader? I said I was sorry about that. No, my mother interrupted. You posted a vague apology on social media, hoping to salvage your reputation. There's a difference. I pulled out the employment contract. The job is yours if you want it. But understand, one mistake, one moment of disrespect to any employee, and you're done. No references, no second chances, no mercy. He stared at the contract, reality finally sinking in. And if I decline? Then you can explain to the FBI how you plan to make your restitution payments without an income, my mother replied. I hear they're particularly interested in those gambling debts you tried to hide. 6 months into his new role as night janitor, I worked late reviewing our latest expansion plans. Through my office windows, I could see Richard mopping floors, his Rolex replaced by a plastic watch that could withstand cleaning chemicals. Dear? My mother called from her office next door. Have you seen Richard's latest performance review? Robert, our facilities manager, had written a detailed evaluation. Struggles with basic cleaning protocols. Appears to think he's too good for bathroom duty. Requires additional training and proper supply inventory management. He asked about advancement opportunities. My mother smirked. Robert told him to master the difference between bleach and ammonia first. Through the security feed, we watched Richard, the man who once commanded board meetings, being taught how to properly use a vacuum cleaner by the same maintenance staff he'd once treated as invisible. Mr. Morrison, Robert's voice was professionally stern. That's the 4th time you've mixed cleaning solutions incorrectly. This isn't like pretending to run a company. It can't fake your way through it. I never faked, Richard began, then stopped, catching his reflection in the window he was supposed to be cleaning. The image showed a stark contrast to his former self. The man who thought throwing a sick woman out of her own home was a display of power. My assistant entered with quarterly reports. Miss Crawford? The Tokyo office exceeded projections, and Mr. Morrison's request for a shift change was rejected. Apparently his night supervisor doesn't appreciate his constant complaints about manual labor. I glanced at the security feed again. Richard was now scrubbing the very boardroom floor where he'd once sat in judgment of others' worth. Every night, he had to polish the table where he'd lost everything, clean the windows that had witnessed his downfall. He tried to skip his mandatory financial management class. My mother noted, reviewing the HR reports. The court counselor reminded him it's part of his plea agreement. My phone lit up with another notification. Crawford Industries had been named one of the most ethically responsible companies in America. The same business Richard once claimed needed his masculine leadership was thriving under authentic, compassionate direction. Ms. Crawford? My assistant reappeared. The domestic violence shelter we fund is ready for its expansion. They've named the new wing after Mom. Perfect timing, my mother smiled, showing me her latest medical report. My oncologist says I'm in full remission. Apparently, removing toxic elements from your life really does improve your health. After all, success isn't just about climbing to the top. Sometimes it's about watching others learn why they fell. And as I watched Richard methodically clean my mother's office windows each night, I thought about all the entitled men propped up by family wealth, all the cruelty disguised as tough love, all the quiet strength waiting for its moment. My phone buzzed one final time, a message from Robert. He finally learned how to properly dispose of hazardous materials. Maybe there's hope for him yet. Perhaps, my mother typed back. Some lessons can only be learned on your knees, scrubbing the floors you once walked on as a king. Because some karma doesn't need to be managed. It delivers itself, one clean floor at a time. After all, true power isn't in the ability to hurt others. It's in the wisdom to know that every empire built on cruelty eventually crumbles. And sometimes the best revenge isn't watching someone fall. It's making them clean up their own mess. The security guard's concerned face appeared on my phone screen. Mrs. Sullivan, your husband is trying to sleep in his office again. Should I let him stay? I glanced at the clock. 11:43 p.m. Let him, James. Just make sure he doesn't access any restricted floors. I ended the call and looked across my desk at my father, who was reviewing investment reports with a sharp eye despite being 72. Catherine, you're being too kind, he said, setting down the papers. That man deserves to sleep on the streets after what he did. Like he made you and Mom do. I kept my voice steady, though the memory still burned. 3 months ago, David had thrown my parents out of our home while I was away on a business trip. In reality, I was finalizing the purchase of his family's company, a fact he still didn't know. My father reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. The arthritis hadn't dulled his strength. You've more than made it right, sweetheart. I smiled, remembering David's face when he walked into the office 2 months ago to find his corner office cleared out and his position downgraded. He still didn't know I was behind it all. To him, it was just bad luck that the mysterious new owners had demoted him right after he'd lost his family estate to aggressive investors. The intercom buzzed. Mrs. Sullivan, your mother is asking about tomorrow's garden party. Tell her I'll be home soon. I gathered my papers, remembering how David used to mock my entry-level job. He never questioned where my small inheritance came from, too busy climbing the corporate ladder to notice his wife was actually his boss's boss's boss. You know he'll be watching from his office window tomorrow, my father said as we rode down in the private elevator. All those society people he used to impress, now arriving at his old estate to celebrate your mother's birthday. Let him watch. The car waited in the private garage, James holding the door. He made his choice the night he decided his image was worth more than his family. The drive home, to what used to be David's family estate, brought back memories of that night. I'd been away finalizing the paperwork to buy out the struggling Sullivan Industries when David called. Your parents are embarrassing me, he'd sneered. Do you know what the neighbors think, seeing your father shuffle around in his old robe? Your mother's medical equipment in the front room? I'm doing you a favor, really. I've called the shelter. By the time I'd rushed home, he changed the locks. My parents, still in their nightclothes, sat on the front steps. My mother's oxygen tank wheezed in the cold. David hadn't known then that I'd spent 10 years building my own empire, or that I'd been watching his family's company crumble under mismanagement. He hadn't known that while he climbed the corporate ladder, I owned the building. The gates opened silently as we approached home. My mother waited in the entrance hall, her oxygen tank now disguised in a discreet portable unit that cost more than David's monthly salary. Everything ready for tomorrow? I asked, hugging her carefully. The caterers are confirmed. The flowers arrive at 9. Her eyes sparkled. I invited David's sister, the only one who helped us that night. She's bringing her children. I nodded. Amanda had been different from the rest of the Sullivans. She tried to give my parents money that night, had called me frantically. Now she worked as my company's HR director, though David didn't know that either. Did you see him? My mother asked softly. In his office? Security called. He's there again. I helped her adjust her oxygen tube. Still too proud to rent an apartment with his new salary. The house, his childhood home, felt different now. Where there had been cold antiques and untouchable furniture, there was now warmth. Medical equipment was tastefully integrated into the decor. The garden, once a showpiece, now had raised beds where my father could tend his vegetables without straining his back. "Catherine," my mother called as I headed upstairs. "Are you ever going to tell him?" I paused on the stairs, remembering David's face the day he'd been called to the main conference room. He'd strutted in, expecting a promotion. Instead, he'd found his personal items packed in boxes and security waiting to escort him to a tiny office 5 floors down. "He'll figure it out tomorrow," I said, when everyone he tried to impress arrives here instead of his sister's house, when they all know what he did. In my home office, I pulled up the security feed from Sullivan Industries. David was there, attempting to sleep on his office couch, his designer suit wrinkled. Once that sight might have moved me to pity, but I remembered my mother's face that night, confused and hurt. My father's dignity as he tried to stand straight despite the cold. My phone buzzed. "Amanda." "He just called me, begging for money again," she said without preamble. I almost told him. "Tomorrow," I promised. "Let him see it all tomorrow." After saying good night, I stood at my window. From here, I could see the lights of Sullivan Industries in the distance. Somewhere in those lights, my husband was learning what it meant to lose everything that mattered. But unlike him, I'd made sure my family would never be cold or afraid again. The morning of my mother's garden party dawned perfectly. I watched from the master bedroom window as workers set up elegant white tents on the lawn. From his office window at Sullivan Industries, I knew David would have a clear view of everything. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. "He's already at his window. Looks like he slept in his office again." I smiled, adjusting my pearls. The ones David once claimed were fake, not realizing they'd cost more than his annual bonus. The doorbell chimed, and I heard my mother greeting the first guests. "Mrs. Sullivan." Our housekeeper appeared at my door. "Your father asked me to inform you that Mr. David's parents have arrived." Perfect timing. I'd specifically invited Robert and Gloria Sullivan, knowing they still didn't understand how they'd lost their family estate. They believed some foreign investment group had bought it. Today, they'd learned the truth. I descended the grand staircase, the same one where David had proposed 5 years ago. Gloria Sullivan stood in the foyer, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. Her husband Robert looked lost without the authority he once wielded in this house. "Catherine?" Gloria's voice wavered. We weren't sure we should come." "Nonsense." I smiled warmly. "You're still family. Besides, there's something you should know about the company's recent changes." Robert's head snapped up. "You know something about that?" "David's been destroyed by that demotion. Living in his office of all things." "Yes," I kept my voice level. "I know quite a bit about that. Shall we join the others in the garden?" The party was in full swing. My mother held court from her favorite chair, her oxygen tank now a sleek, nearly invisible device. My father tended his prized roses, showing other guests the garden he created. All of David's high society friends were there, the same ones who had once looked down on my parents. I led David's parents to a private tent. Amanda was waiting, along with our company's board chairman. "What's this about?" Robert demanded. "Please sit." I gestured to the chairs. "It's time you understood exactly what happened to Sullivan Industries." The chairman cleared his throat. "Mrs. Catherine Sullivan isn't just our CEO's daughter-in-law. She's our owner and CEO." Gloria's champagne glass slipped from her fingers. Amanda caught it smoothly. "That's impossible," Robert sputtered. "The company was bought by Summit Holdings." "Summit Holdings," I said softly, "is my company. Has been for 10 years. While David was working his way up from junior executive, I was building an empire." But you were just a secretary," Gloria whispered. "No, Mother," Amanda cut in. That's just what David told you. Catherine has 3 degrees and runs multiple companies. She kept it quiet because she wanted David to love her for herself. I walked to the tent's opening, gesturing towards Sullivan Industries in the distance. Right now, your son is watching this party from his office window, the same office where he made the call to throw my parents out on the street. Robert's face had gone pale. We didn't know about your parents. David said they left voluntarily. Of course he did. I turned back to them. Just like he didn't tell you he changed the locks while they were still gathering their medications. Or that he laughed when my mother couldn't breathe properly because her oxygen tank was running low. Gloria started to cry. Amanda handed her a tissue. I'm not telling you this to hurt you, I continued. I'm telling you because you raised a son who values appearance over humanity, who would rather see elderly people homeless than have his image tarnished. Through the tent's window, I could see David's office light. He was still watching. His phone would be ringing soon, as the society friends called to tell him where they were. What do you want from us? Robert asked quietly. Nothing. Your company is doing better under proper management. David's position matches his actual capabilities. And this house, I smiled. This house is where my parents will live out their days in comfort. And David, Gloria whispered. That depends on him. He can swallow his pride, rent an apartment with his new salary, and learn humility. Or he can keep sleeping in his office, watching what he lost through his window. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. David's name flashed on the screen. I showed it to his parents before declining the call. Now, shall we join the party? I believe my mother is about to cut her cake. We emerged from the tent to find the garden even more crowded. David's former business associates mingled with my executives. His society friends complimented my mother on her lovely home. My father proudly showed off his vegetable garden to renowned chefs who supplied my restaurant chains. I watched Gloria and Robert move through the crowd, seeing their son's world through new eyes. They'd learn, as David would, that true worth isn't measured in square footage or social standing. My phone buzzed again. Another text from the security guard at Sullivan Industries. Mr. Sullivan is requesting to leave early. He says he needs to speak with you urgently. I typed back, standard protocol. He leaves at normal business hours. Amanda joined me, champagne in hand. Brutal, sis. No, I watched my parents accept congratulations from people who once ignored them. Justice. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the manicured lawn, security alerted me to David's arrival at the gates. Right on schedule. Let him in, I instructed, catching Amanda's eye across the garden. She nodded, quietly gathering their parents and a few key guests near the main terrace. David's expensive car, now worth more than his annual salary, roared out the driveway. He stormed out, still wearing his wrinkled office suit, looking nothing like the polished executive he once was. What is the meaning of this? He demanded, his voice carrying across the party. Conversation stopped. Guests turned to watch. I remained seated beside my mother, whose hand found mine and squeezed gently. Hello, David. Lovely of you to join us. Join you? In my house? He looked wild, desperate. You're all trespassing. This is my family's property. Actually, Amanda stepped forward. If you'd read the paperwork properly, you'd know exactly who owns this estate now. David's eyes darted between his sister and me. You're working for them? No, David. I stood slowly. She works for me. They all do. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the birds seemed to pause their evening songs. That's impossible, he whispered, but I saw the first flicker of understanding in his eyes. Summit Holdings? That's me. Sullivan Industries? Also mine. I walked toward him slowly. That corner office you lost. I ordered that. The demotion? My decision. This house. I gestured around us. I bought it the day after you threw my parents out. He staggered back a step. You're lying. You were just what, David? A secretary? A simple corporate wife? I laughed softly. You never once asked about my work, did you? Too busy bragging about your own achievements to notice that your wife owned the building you worked in. His parents appeared behind him. Gloria touched his shoulder, but he shrugged her off violently. Is this revenge? He spat. For your parents? They were embarrassing me. My friends? Your friends? I gestured to the gathered crowd. They're all here, David. They know exactly what you did. How you left an elderly couple on the street at midnight. How you cut off your wife's parents because they weren't prestigious enough for you. His face crumpled as he spotted his former business partners among the guests, the society friends he tried so hard to impress. All watching, all knowing. You can't do this to me, he whispered. I already have. I turned back to my parents. You have choices, David. Keep your job, your real level job. Rent an apartment. Learn to live within your actual means. Or don't. Keep sleeping in your office, watching this house, remembering what your pride cost you. Catherine. He tried to step toward me, but security moved smoothly to block his path. We can talk about this. Work something out. Like my parents tried to talk to you that night, I kept my voice steady. No, David. The time for talking was before you chose your reputation over humanity. I signaled to security. Please escort Mr. Sullivan out. He can return to his office or find somewhere else to sleep tonight. That's no longer my concern. As they led him away, I heard him calling my name, his voice breaking, the same way my mother had called his name that night, begging him to let them at least get their medications. The party resumed slowly. Amanda handled the whispers and questions with practiced ease. My parents remained dignified, accepting congratulations and well wishes. Later that night, after the guests had gone and my parents had retired to their comfortable rooms, I stood at my window again. David's office light was still on at Sullivan Industries. My phone buzzed one last time, a text from him. I'm sorry. Please, I'll do anything. I left it unanswered, just as he had ignored my parents' pleas that night. Tomorrow, he would watch from his window as my mother tended her flowers and my father read his morning paper in the garden. He would see the life he threw away, the family he lost, all because he thought appearances mattered more than love. And maybe, just maybe, he would learn what I had known all along, that true worth isn't found in social status or corner offices, but in the way we treat those who depend on us.